Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting for Thursday, August 24th, 2023, 5 p.m. Great. Thank you. Allison, thank you.
You're
All right.
so welcome.
So, Dee, I need the roll call.
Marlene Newman, Ernesto Castaneda,
Here.
Daniel Schlegel,
Here.
Sam DeSaller,
Here.
Matthew Seddon, John Saunders,
Here.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Here.
Allison Chopra, here, Bernard Cross, Duncan Campbell, Kirsten Hawley,
Here.
Karen Duffy,
Okay.
Chris Sturbaum.
Here. Thank you, Dee. All right, we need approval for our minutes from August 10th.
I'll motion.
All right, Dave, roll call.
Dee,
I'm sorry, what was that?
roll call for the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We still like
Ernesto Castaneda,
Yeah.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Abstain.
Motion carried.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dee. Okay, we're going to move on to new business, and we're going to get a presentation from planning concerning Cascades Park. So, our planning folks, give us a scoop.
I apologize. You need to say that because of the equipment.
Good evening. My name is Scott Robinson. I'm the Director of Planning and Transportation. I don't really have a presentation per se. I'm just here to have a conversation about one of the opportunities or alternatives being considered for Old State Road 37. I provided a staff report to Common Council a couple weeks ago, and that information is available on the city's council's website. My understanding, the Historic Preservation Commission is considering and looking at a historic district. I believe the Parks Department, with their recent improvements, is being considered to be placed on the National Register for some of the historic attributes of the park. To kind of rewind to where we are with planning trails, paths, new connections throughout our community, and multimodal transportation. The north area of the community, we've planned for a number of facilities for bike lanes, trails, sidewalk connections to connect our parks, schools, and other destinations. With that, there has been prioritization of some of these projects. There's been bonding, GO bonds, and other projects that have been funded through City Council, both to fund improvements for Griffey Lake Dam, the pier, other side paths and multimodal transportation facilities to help connect our area resources such as Griffey Lake, Lower Cascades, Upper Cascades Park, and our schools. The one particular section of roadway on Old State Road 37, roughly from about the IMI entrance on the south end, going north about a half a mile, is very narrow and very challenging. So you have steep slopes on one side of the roadway, you have a creek on the west side, and then you have trees and some historic features of benches and shelters and what have you. When our department's looking at implementing facilities, which this is identified as a multi-use path, we're looking at the feasibility of how to implement that facility on this particular portion of roadway. It presents a lot of challenges with us, both environmentally, historically, through that section of roadway because it's very narrow. So there's basically four alternatives that we're looking at. One of them is kind of the do-nothing approach. We could do nothing here. For accessibility reasons, at a minimum, I would suggest we should looking at installing a sidewalk on that section of roadway that would connect from Miller Showers Park going north to the existing facility that we've built along Old State Road 37. The other option would be a one-way road alternative, which is kind of confusing to think about. So one portion of the roadway would be allocated to vehicles, motorized vehicles going one direction. We don't know which way would be best, north or southbound. And the other portion could be converted to a multi-use pathway. That alternative, something that we could be considered moving forward, is alternative number 2. The third alternative would be to build side path or that you see, like, for example, on the current roadway to the north from Clubhouse Drive all the way over to the Ferguson Dog Park into Lower Griffey Dam, where you have the roadway and then there's a little bit of a grade separation and a 10-foot wide path. And then the last option would be to build a multi-use trail, which is completely separated from the road, kind of like the Beeline Trail. It's a wider facility. All those have trade-offs with this particular section of roadway of what impacts it would have both environmentally to the park, to the trees, and what have you. And then the last alternative would be to close the roadway for this one section of roadway to convert that roadway into a multi-use facility. So those are the alternatives being considered. One of the reasonings behind the administration's suggestion to close the roadway is all of these alternatives would cost a lot of money. The low-cost option, closing this portion of roadway to motorized vehicle traffic, would save about $3 million under our current estimate. So that's what's being considered. There's no money being allocated at this time for any of the alternatives. There's been some past studies, feasibilities done. Our department's done outreach with prior studies, implemented some of the facilities that have gone on. Parks Department has done improvements, most recently with some stream side stabilization, increased some accessibility to some of the shelters. So that activity continues. City Council has also bonded for design for a side path along Dunn Street that would again be part of this network that I've talked about. So that's essentially where we're at right now, and I just wanted to provide an opportunity to maybe help clarify and answer some questions. Really, there isn't any decision on a preferred alternative. There's no funding allocated this time for any of the alternatives. Really, the administration is looking for guidance on what's the preferred alternative. And again, the road closed option, as some people may be familiar with, is mostly to look at the existing constraints that this section of roadway presents and an opportunity to help reduce the cost that those resources could be used elsewhere in the community. I mean, $3 million is a pretty significant cost. So happy to answer any questions or help clarify some things, but I understand it's confusing. It's a complicated project or area that we're looking at, and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks. Sam, do you have any questions?
We're looking at this through the lens of historic preservation, obviously. And so usually we don't focus on budgetary constraints. We don't focus on a lot of implementation constraints, except in that they diminish the historic nature of whatever resource or whatever structure or whatever landscape we're looking at. This is on the National Register, and I do think that the Commission would very much like to be involved in the process of how do we address the needs of the community versus the impetus of the Commission. And one of the things that we consider sometimes is making something a district to add an additional layer of review and protection for historic resources. if we decide to recommend that to the Common Council, do you see any downsides?
Well, that's a great question. I would say currently no, because there's enough environmental and other constraints that if the city were to use any federal funding, that really limits our opportunity to leverage that resource. That's typically what we look to do on many of our capital projects for transportation, is to leverage federal money. So the mere fact that it's a park raises a red flag for the feds when we look at federal money. National Register is another one. The environmental constraints is another one. I mean, I could keep going down the list. There's a lot of things that would, in this particular section of roadway, would trigger much scrutiny by the federal and other agencies to leverage federal funding. Now, historic preservation, that's your recommendation on a local district, and I recognize the importance that this park has, both historically with the nature of the park, the features, and what have you. So I don't see that being contradictory to what your desires are, or to implement any improvements in the park. Again, the limitations that I look at from like a federal funding perspective on transportation, that would just be another one that might be considered at a lower level of, more local level of review and consideration. I guess I want to have a better understanding on, I think there's been some confusion about access and accessibility, and so one of the things I want to make sure is very clear, that we don't confuse the two on what access and accessibility is. So whenever we do transportation projects, we need to make sure that they're compliant with the American Disabilities Act, ADA. That's accessibility, that's not access. We're also trying to provide access for those who might not have the means or ability to have access to a single occupancy motorized vehicle. So currently now, that section of roadway, either you have to walk or ride in the street, which is okay for some residents of our community, or to drive that section of corridor, which again, not all members of our community feel comfortable doing that. If we were to do any improvements through there, whatever facility we would put in would have to be both ADA compliant, and in my opinion, would increase accessibility for those that don't have those mode choices. I've heard and I understand that some have concern about not having the ability to drive through that area because of their convenience to access the park, their enjoyment to see that particular area of the roadway, and I certainly hear and understand that. But I want to make sure there's clarity on the difference between accessibility and access. They're kind of two different things. And so I know there was some concern about some of the improvements that Parks did with the recent improvements going south from Clubhouse Drive to, I guess, the fjord where the Sycamore Shelter is, about how historically people could drive through the creek to access the shelter on that side. Again, I don't think that would be something that I would say is a good practice for the environmental health of the stream bank. Also, the integrity of the historic lime walls and retention walls that are along the stream bank. What happens when you increase water flows, both with climate change and the type of improvements that have been put in there in the past, you've increased stream flow. It actually creates velocity and more friction along those historic walls. That's why you saw some of the improvements that were done there or look a little bit different than in the past. In 2020, we had a storm event that actually washed out sections of the roadway, and you can see a variety of mechanisms that were used to help shore up that stream bank. One of the things that really needs to happen before anything is to help look at the health of the creek, the stream bank, and restore that stream bank so that we don't have any further erosion that could damage the roadway no matter what facility is put on there. So that's one of the things that we really need to start considering and looking at.
I did want to clarify one thing. Before we continue, the National Register nomination is currently at the state level. It hasn't been sent to the National Park Service yet for review. This is a pretty long process. It's been up there for about a year now. So just letting you know that it's still not in the National Register, but it is in the process of.
Thank you, Gloria. Ernesto, have you got any questions?
Yes, thank you, Scott.
Mhm.
The options that you described, have they been shared with anybody else outside planning department?
Yeah, I've provided a detailed memo to City Council that outlined a long history of studies and reports. I believe there was a study done in 2019 that sort of evaluated the corridor in a segment-by-segment aspect and sort of recommended a blended opportunity to look at. The short answer to that study really came down to really no matter what option we look at other than closing the roadway would entail widening the road, which again would have impacts both to the stream bank, the trees, the steepness of the bank on the east side of the corridor
I
and
guess
what
the
have
reason
you.
I'm asking is if maybe this is a great opportunity to have a collaboration between the Historic Preservation Commission with your department to trying to find a balance between those options and present that to the council to move forward with this in case that's what we end up doing. Just to try to find the best option or the options.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that study with you. Again, I don't know if it is, I'm sure it identified some of the historic structures there, and again, would be avoiding those. I'm not aware of how they would impact any of the historic structures on that corridor per se. So again, I think just trying to understand, maybe you can help educate me on what the expectation or concerns would be with any of these alternatives and how that might hinder or hurt the historic aspect that you're looking out to achieve.
Okay. So,
Elizabeth?
I just wanted to know if the public's had opportunity to share their input.
Great question, thanks. Yes, there's been opportunity, both resident-led. One of the residents have held their town hall meeting here recently this summer. I believe going back to 2020, during COVID, there was a pilot study that shut down the roadway for a temporary amount of time. There were 2 surveys conducted at that time, and there was opportunity for public comment then. There was some opportunity both at Parks Board and Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission for additional feedback on that. So there has been some dialogue. I was actually on WFIU for noon edition a couple weeks ago, and so there's the dialogues out there. So certainly opportunity to reach out to city council members. Part of my whole point of going into city council to present the alternatives being considered or looked at is to help raise awareness to the challenges that present us and get feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Questions or?
Questions?
Okay,
I mean, make it a comment, because this is a discussion.
make it a
I
comment?
mean, yeah, because we're having a discussion, but
Okay.
questions, because this is just
Okay.
amongst us.
My comment would be, there are so many perspectives and rationalizations and justifications for what's happening to the park, but I think the historic perspective has been left out. You know, I think the first part of this park project has been exceptional, and I was fortunate to be part of that planning process, and I really approve of what's happened so far. But this south end, there are some real negative impacts that can happen to what is a historic park. And that could be how the road's handled. There's a bridge that is even proposed. There's a lot of paving that could happen. And there are real impacts to the park by not allowing the historic highway to flow the way it has since before Bloomington, or as Bloomington was formed. So I think our perspective is important, and I think the only way we'll have a voice is if we locally designate the park. And then we'll be able to talk, be at the table, have our perspective, and of course, there are all these other realities. We don't run this show, but we certainly can assert the community's interest in this historic park. that goes beyond, there's a lot of, I don't know what to call it, but technical jargon that rationalizes a lot of things besides some common sense solutions that could be sharing the road. There are ways to do this that may not even be on the table, but I think we need to speak up for the integrity of that historic Bloomington's first park. The Dixie Highway was the way into town, and you know, it was the old road before there were cars, because that's where you have a flat space along the creek. And who knows, it was a trail before that. So people love this park, and our responsibility is to protect that historic park, in my opinion.
Thank you, Chris. Kirsten, do you have anything?
No.
Comment or question?
No questions.
Daniel?
No, I think my fellow commissioners have already said anything I could ask, so.
Thank you, Daniel. And Karen?
Same, I share the concern and interest in protecting the historic value of this park that has already been expressed.
Allison? Thank you. Bernard?
I came in late. I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment
Okay.
right now. But
You know, my one comment is I agree with my commissioners, and I think it's a park that needs to be protected in some way. I have many fond memories of being down there. It's a great place. Thank you.
If I may,
Yes.
I would be very helpful for me to understand what protection is expected when I presented the alternatives. I don't understand how that is not consistent with the goals of this commission. I believe whatever decision is made, that we would work with this and other commissions to ensure that we maintain the historic nature of the features and aspects of the park. So it's not really clear to me what alternative, if any, presents a challenge or concern from the commission. So I think that would be helpful, but again, I certainly don't believe there would be any reason we wouldn't work with this commission or others, whatever the improvements have been made. I mean, as Mr. Sturbaum said, the recent project that was just implemented, I think, is a great example of what could be done here, and I don't see why that wouldn't be any different for the remainder of the project. It's just it's going to have a heavy price tag, whenever we come to that point in time. So that would be helpful for me to understand moving forward.
It's a short list: more paving, making a bridge across the creek. I know there are reasons to shut the ford down, but it's one of the last fords in the entire county where you cross the creek. You know, the landscape not being shared by people that drive through a highway that has been open for hundreds of years now. Those all impact how the community experiences that park. So and I'm glad you want to talk to the commission, and I just suggest this is the best way for us to have a dialogue that is two-sided. If we have some authority with the park representing the community's historic interest in that park, we'll have a serious conversation that way, and I think that's the best way for this to function.
Yeah, I think for us, we would probably look at moving forward, making it a historic district, and designating it.
My question goes along with that. Under what rule of law would we make that happen?
Yeah, so just to
Yeah.
talk about this, and Gloria, please jump in at any point. I think it's
Yeah.
important to understand what we're talking about here. This commission doesn't make anything historic, right? You don't have
Right.
that power.
Mhm.
You can say to the city council, we think this is a good idea, and then the city council would actually designate the local historic district. I think everybody understands that, but just in case there's any confusion.
I think it's good that you said it anyway.
And then after that, to the extent district guidelines are gonna be written, those will be written by the owners. And that, in this case, of course, is the city, right? So it's the city with the Parks Department that'll write the district guidelines. So, just so we're all clear on this.
So ultimately, the decision would not be this
No.
commission's, it would be the council's.
Right.
Well, the commission does have the ability to say, hey, we want to take this to council. That's the first
But
step.
what I said is ultimately their
Yes,
decision would
exactly.
be.
You
You're correct.
initiate the process.
Yeah,
That's right.
initiate their
Sure,
process.
sure.
Common
Okay.
council makes the final determination. And then,
And they're the people that represent the people.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
basically.
we're not elected by district or by any sort of political, I mean, I guess we have some political seats, but, you know, they're a better representative of the city as a whole than HPC is, would be my opinion.
well.
So that's good to know. I'm glad to hear that that's the ultimate decision. The ultimate decision maker in that regard.
Yeah, and then any big changes to the park, especially if they affect the landscape, according to, we would use the guidelines, but even before any guideline is written, we do have the Secretary of the Interior standards to guide us. So we already have some pre-made guidelines developed by the federal government that help do that guide. And it covers both buildings and landscapes. And we do have questions about the purview of the road itself, but changes around the road would fall under those categories. Major changes to the landscape, even certain smaller changes to the landscape would go through the certificate of appropriateness process. You can correct me if I'm wrong, and that's where the HPC would have jurisdiction to make determinations. Yes, no, let's negotiate with you, or let's like change. Oftentimes and this is kind of the process for every type of project, even here right now in this building, which is areas are not, the whole building is not, but areas are owned by the city. The city does bring its certificate of appropriateness applications to Common Council, and sometimes the city also brings, and any other petitioner and constituents. We have some here right now that bring the ideas to the HPC before applying formally for a certificate of appropriateness. So that's basically the additional space where the HPC has its sort of, role to play in the protection of historic sites and places. I don't know, Scott, if that helps.
Very good.
Clarify.
I think it helped my question, so thank you.
Okay. Do we have any more questions or discussion right now?
Just for staff, would this be an appropriate time to make a motion to put this on the agenda for our next meeting? To list and prepare that for next meeting?
I'm gonna bump that up to
Well, so
staff.
you're talking about putting on the agenda, having the park.
Or local
be
designation
on the
at our next meeting?
I think that's ambitious as far as the time it would take to put together the
Okay, well, we
the
can make a
necessary due
motion
diligence.
to put it on at the soonest possible future meeting, but I'm suggesting this might be the time to make that motion.
Okay. Do we have anybody who wants to make that motion to put it on our meeting? Not this next one, but maybe in, let's say, October, to give Gloria time to put something together?
Would that be
Would that be
okay?
okay?
October would give me time to do research.
Maybe like the end of our meeting in October, because if we don't do it in October, November, we only have one meeting. Same thing in December. So not to push her, Gloria, let's put her on our last meeting to bring this up.
Let me look at the calendar, sorry.
Just so to give the commissioners context, where Gloria's position is, we're going through a review process with HUD on our environmental reviews, and so that requires mandatory staff time. And not that I'm not outweighing the importance of this, but just to let you know what we're mandated to do by the federal government on environmental reviews, and Gloria's spending a lot of time there, which is why I bring up the concern about staff management. So just for full disclosure to commissioners.
Thank you, John.
Is there a reason to do it so soon? I mean, how fast is this project? So, I mean, could we wait until next year for something like this?
Yeah.
I'm asking, I guess, staff that's visiting.
I'd be happy to provide context on timing. As I said, there's no funding, there's no allocated funding to do anything on this section of roadway at this time. Council does have bonds associated with another project and not in this area. So with the new administration, they would need to propose an appropriation or something to even get into the design piece of the aspect. So really, right now, it's feedback. I think there's plenty of time to Gloria can do her due diligence on proposing that. I wouldn't anticipate anything. The very first step, if any, would be allocation of money to do a more in-depth study to look at the feasibility and the stream bank stabilization. I think that's the number one concern, from my opinion, is we've got demonstrated need of the erosion that's happening there, and to make sure we have that. And then the second step would be, again, requesting funding for a consultant to come in to do the engineering, and that involves process. Those typically right there will be years, to get the funding request, hire a consultant, get those processes rolling, have meetings and what have you. So I think that I don't sense an urgency by this group to make that action, but just to give you some context of how I see the process.
I think we should go ahead and move forward with Gloria preparing the documents, and then we'll discuss it and see if you want to take it further than that. I do realize sometimes it takes years to get funding. Sometimes it just miraculously appears and things get to move forward. So I think that, we should very seriously consider moving on it. That's how I feel about it.
Well, there's not even a motion on the table, so if
We don't
there's
have a motion. Chris can't make a motion.
I understand, so there's not a motion on the table, so I'll make my comment should there be a motion.
Okay.
I won't comment on anything that's not on the table quite yet.
All right, thank you. So,
So October should be fine. The whole write-up is almost completely done for the National Register. So we talked last meeting about how, with some assistance, it would be relatively simple to get this proposal together. And that meeting that the citizens had was pushed because of a timeline that was in the paper that did say this is on a faster track. Now I'm hearing different situation because there was a political push to make this happen by the end of the year. So I think if we're convinced, we should not wait. We should be in line and ready to do it.
So basically, we need a motion to put this
I'll
on.
make a motion.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
And what is the motion exactly?
Is that we
Put it on our
put this on the
agenda.
table to have a discussion in October.
Okay, thank you.
What is the proper motion to list it?
To bring the nomination, like the staff report. So there are two parts on our end. One is to present the staff report and for the HPC to vote according to that staff report if they are going to move it to Common Council. And then the second part is, is a public meeting. Mike?
Public hearing.
Public
Public
hearing that needs to be in the newspaper X amount of days before. I believe it's 10 days before. And letters have to be sent out to the owners and all of the owners' neighbors with regards to
So
that.
this is a simple motion to notice this meeting, to hear the
Yeah, so the
designation.
staff report is the first part, I think.
So what I would recommend, I think, is almost what you said, Commissioner Sturbaum, which is a motion to add an item for consideration to the October, I would pick the exact date, I haven't looked it up in the
October
calendar.
26th.
October 26th, Historic Preservation Commission agenda, which is staff report regarding.
Cascades.
Cascades.
Perfect,
Yes.
Lower Cascades designation.
So what he said.
Yeah, what he said.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Oh, Vanessa, thank you, Vanessa. And so we need to take a roll call
Well, can we comment on the motion then?
on the motion?
Mhm.
For you, Allison?
Only
Okay.
for me?
Only for you.
I don't think that's fair. I feel that this is extremely premature. I think that there was an email referenced by neighbors who are perhaps getting information from one or two people and overreacting a tad. I appreciate staff's opinion that this is going to be a long process. I'd like to be further along in the process so I can make a more informed decision if we're going to consider any historic preservation. I don't know. I think we need way more information from planning, parks, and any other department that is involved before we start to talk about this in October. And the fact that there is a new administration and new council members who are going to make any decisions concerning finances should be in place prior to us trying to push forward any votes to the current council. And I think that Mr. Sturbaum knows that. He knows who's on the council now and how they may vote, and I think that this is very politically driven, first of all.
Oh, I'm sorry, Allison, but
It's my comment time, so I'm allowed to say this, and I have been a city council member. I know how things work, and I don't think that it's fair to try to get this on the agenda in October and then try to push it to council before we have a new elected officials and expect that those two different bodies to force the council that's there until the end of December to vote on this when they're not the ones that are going to be voting on the majority of the project.
I think
That is my personal experience, and I'm not making things up. I know how people work. You all know who's going to show up to this meeting, right? Is it going to be anyone that's opposed to putting it into historic preservation? Anyone? I mean, maybe like one person? This is how these things work. It's very politically driven. Mr. Sturbaum, who is a main component of this, knows that, and he's using his political power to be on this committee. Do not cut me off. That's not fair. I'm on this just like you, and I can say what I know and what I think needs to be said. Please don't cut me off.
okay.
I'm very much a realist, and I know what's happening here. There's going to be a bunch of people from that email list or his listserv or that neighborhood's listserv or whoever it is who wants this to be a historic preservation committee, and that's who we're going to hear from before the beginning of the year. And I don't think that that's the way that we should handle ourselves. I think we should handle ourselves slowly and deliberately as long as we have time. We pushed through the smokestack because it was dangerous. It was very important that we pushed through it and did it quickly. But this has time. I don't read the news because I was on the city council and I'm sick of reading it. And I don't want to hear national news right now. So me, as someone on this is the very first time I've heard about this. Me, someone on this commission. And I don't know, maybe you can call it irresponsible, you can call it whatever you will, but I didn't even know that this was happening. And then to have so little information and ask staff to come up with a report in October when we don't have all of the information that we might want or might need to be prudently voting on something, I think this is completely rushed. No one's given a really good reason as to why we should not wait. People are saying, oh, why not do it in October, but why not wait? What's a really good reason? There's not a really good reason. To give it some time, get all the information, talk to folks. Maybe I want to be able to talk to people from different departments, from planning and from the parks. I know I'm taking a lot of time. I'm just urging us all to not rush into doing something when it's like, probably the reason Mr. Robinson is here is because there's been a lot of premature activity around and fear around this project. It's all very premature. And I appreciate you being here because there are probably people on this commission who wanted it addressed, but to me it seems actually premature in the process, but I understand why you would do that. So I'm going to vote no and be a responsible citizen and commission member and wait to get all the information I think that we should have before moving forward.
All right, thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
So we do have a motion on the table. We do have a second.
May I make a brief comment?
Yes, Chris?
I was a historic commissioner for probably 15 years before I ran for council. And now I'm back to just being a historic commissioner and a citizen. And I do not
You're an
mean,
advisory member, not a-
excuse me,
Let's just hang off right now. We got a motion on the table. Chris, I know you got.
I will withdraw any
Thank
further
you.
comment.
And then, Dee, will you do the roll, please?
Ernesto Castaneda,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Seven, John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
Allison Chopra,
No?
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, so let's move on. We have 2201 East Morris Pike, Kevin McRitter. I believe they're with us this evening to give us a presentation. So Gloria will, Gloria, do you have it?
Yeah,
Okay.
let me, hold up, let me
Get
stop
started.
share here.
If I need to free up this chair, I can, I feel like I'm crowding out petitioners and commissioners, so let me move to the, I don't want to hold you up from speaking, because we kind of need you at the mic maybe.
I don't know where I should be.
Let me move.
Tell me where to
Right here,
go.
we'll-
I have a brief
We'll put you right here.
PowerPoint presentation to walk you
Okay.
through my points.
Very good. We
Um,
appreciate PowerPoint.
Pictures help.
If they eliminate the USB, please tell me they did eliminate the USB.
The garage, yeah, so it's not.
Okay. Your USB is on the back side of the computer.
Oh,
That's
that's
how I-
right.
Just so that,
Do you want him to come over to your chair?
There's,
yeah, give me one
Yeah.
second, let me
No,
find
let's
it.
go down for a minute and let him get over there so
You want your-
Joey can help. Yeah. We'll move back. That's all right. Thanks, Karen.
let me know when you see the files on the
That's not
USB.
gonna be here, sorry,
No.
on the wrong computer. The problem of having too many computers, okay. So, okay, here we go. Which file
Okay,
is?
now, do you have PowerPoint on this computer?
Yeah.
Do the bottom one. Is that the PowerPoint?
Looks like it, okay. And, let me set this up.
Yeah.
And it's all yours. I'm actually gonna give you the chair.
Okay. Hello, my name's Kevin McWhirter. I live at 2201 East Morris Pike. I've been there about 12 years. And I'm going to use a PowerPoint presentation, probably about 10 minutes, and just to go through my points of concern. And I want to add a garage, and I sent plans into the city this spring, and I found out the city said, hey, wait a minute, this house has been designated on the Indiana State Survey for Historic Properties as an outstanding example. And so they contacted Gloria, and then she contacted me and said, you know, wait a minute, we got to go through a certain process and so on. So I'm hoping to go through a first step here. I'm not exactly sure what the steps are, but hoping to go through a first step and get some discussion possibly of what I'd like to do, its appropriateness for this house, and maybe move forward from that. So basically, the house was built in 1956. The first level, I've got a picture of the original house, it was just the first layer. An addition was added in 1968, and that's the second level, and there's a family room in back. And so as far as, I bought this house, and you'll see a picture of it when I bought it. I put a lot of sort of restoration into it. I'd kind of like you to understand where I'm coming from and what I'd like to do with this property. So there's a brand new Duralast roof put on by Building Associates about 4 years ago, 60 millimeters, so it's a thicker commercial grade rubber roof on that. It has 5 new skylights. I had custom stainless steel chimney caps put on. We were having some crumbling in the concrete blocks, so it's been re-chinked and all fixed and watertight with new stainless steel chimney caps. We refurbished all the Anderson windows, and All the bathrooms have been remodeled. Made storm windows. If you see the silver outline on each of the windows, that's an inserted storm window. I had half of those when I bought the house. So I had a window company here in town make exact copies of the same frames, so they fit in exactly in all the original windows. So these windows down here were put in 1956 there, Anderson. These were put in 1968. The 1956 ones actually work better. There's 2 bathrooms, like maybe 2.5 bathrooms. They've been remodeled. The entire first floor was linoleum and carpet. Pulled all that up, had it ground and polished, so it's all a concrete floor. I know you may not be as concerned about interior stuff and more exterior, I think. But I'm just going through what I've done and where I'm coming from with my request. The entire house was scraped and caulked and painted. Custom storm window inserts for both the exterior doors, front and back. I found out I was going to go to Menards and buy steel exterior doors, and I found out that they're custom size. They're like 4 inches or 6 inches higher than a standard exterior door. So, and they're wood, and so I had custom double pane inserts made for them, and so that insulated them much better. And saved the original doors. So that was something that I was glad that turned out that way. Keeping the kitchen 100% original. New glass wall in the back. There's a living room added in the back in 1968. It was a slider, 3 aluminum sliders. All 3 of those were filmed up. All 3 of them would frost in the winter. And so I had those replaced with brand new fixed pane, 2 5-foot by 6-foot fixed pane windows and a new slider. One of the walls was concrete. I had that furred up and put rigid foam on the wall. The ceiling is 2 by 6 tongue and groove decking on the original flat roof and on the sloped roof for the family room in the back. And I had that, we furred up, pulled off the old shingles, furred that up, put 1.5 inch or 3-inch rigid foam, OSB, and then new asphalt shingles on that. So now that room, which had no insulation at all when I bought it, is now almost completely insulated. I used to call it the cold room, and now it's a very comfortable room. Okay, so that's that. Do I pick? Oh, here we go. Let's see. So when I bought the house, about 2 or 3 months after that, the granddaughter, who still lives in town, of the IU professors that built this in 1956, called me and said, hey, my grandmother has 120, or has pictures of the house being built. Would you like them? She lives out in Arizona. And I said, absolutely. So she sent me a box of 120 black and white photos from grade preparation to the final house here. So all black and white. So it's a framing, concrete block, ductwork and everything. So it's really a really nice historic history. Another thing that I found out, this is what the house looked like when I bought it. Another thing I found out is I had the original blueprints to the addition from '68, you know, rolled up in the closet type thing you find when you buy a house sometimes. The architect on it was Gladys Miller. I looked her up on Google. She was the 3rd registered woman architect in the state of Indiana. I contacted the Ball State Architectural Archive Department. They had digital copies of the original 2 blueprints and the addition blueprints. So I bought those. So I have digital copies of all the blueprints of the original and the addition done in '68. So the scope of the project, I'm asking, and I've got plans here that I'll show you real quick. I want to add a garage out in front of the carport and to the side with sort of a wood shop art studio on the side going back to the chimney. And you'll see blueprints on that here in just a second. So, and the main reasons that I want to do this is for auto storage and security. I've had my cars broken into 3 times. Morse Pike's a pretty busy street. It's right next to the Covenanter Cemetery, if you're familiar with that High Street and Morse Pike intersection. So I'm right past the cemetery towards the mall on Morse Pike. It sits back pretty far. Sometimes people don't even know that it's there. But so I've had some security with my autos. I had tool storage is now in one of my bedrooms. Lawn equipment storage, bicycle storage is in my entryway. I have golf clubs and pickleball equipment in my living room. There's no storage in this house, so a garage would add a great amount of some good storage. I'm a woodworker. I would love to have a small wood shop and everything I have to do inside. Right? If I want to sand or cut wood, I have to go outside and do my project. So I'd like just a small art studio. The art studio could be converted to a future either an in-law suite or an additional bedroom living space or whatever. If somebody that bought the house later on didn't want a art studio or a wood shop. So this up here is the original house where you saw the carport, and then this is what I'm asking for input on is a two-car garage here, two-door garage, and then the workshop down towards the chimney back there. The carport would be converted to be able to walk through. I'd have a beam or a steel beam or a glue lam beam there to add that as additional space into the wood shop. Coming into the garage, you would walk through here, and I would like to cut a hole in the concrete block here in the entryway, and that would be the only change to the original structure of the house.
Could I ask where the front of the building is?
This is facing Morse Pike, which is facing south, so you're looking north from Morse Pike towards the front. So the front of the house is up here, okay? And then the carport was on the right. And you'll see more as we go here. Okay. So the garage doors are front loading facing Morse Pike. The front of the garage would be 150 feet from Morse Pike. This is a 0.99 acre lot. And so there's as much room in the back of the lot as there is in the front. House is pretty much dead center on the lot. So here is a site of just the front, and so here's the garage and the wood shop with the original house. The red line designates where the garage and the wood shop would connect to the existing house. And again, 150 feet from Morse Pike. Original gravel driveway, we'll probably keep that. Might look into asphalt possibly if that's an option.
One more question.
Yeah.
How far back is the back?
Almost the
lot?
same distance.
I'm sorry, how much do you have behind the house that you
That-
own? The same as
The same, so
A huge
about 200
amount.
feet. It's a beautiful wooded backyard.
Okay, okay.
Beautiful wooded backyard. And that's part of my concern is, I did look at the option and talked with Gabriel in planning about detached options for a garage. And I sat down with him last month, and the first thing he said is, I just did a quick little preliminary review with my department. We will not give you a variance for any detached structure in front of the house. I said, okay, I just trying to see what all my options were. And in the back of the house, I've got, it's an all glass window, all glass wall right here in the living room. It's a beautiful wooded view lot. I don't want to build a big square box taking up the wooded lot if I didn't have to. Please ask any questions as I go. Here's a front elevation with the proposed garage change of what it would add to the structure. So I've done AutoCAD for 35 years, so these are all my own drawings. And the two garage doors they haven't been decided yet, but I'm leaning towards the right to match kind of the style of the original house. And the impact of what I'm covering up to the original house is very little. It's actually just about half of the carport. And then that two-car garage is the only change in the front elevation. And I am looking for any design help or considerations in the historic preservation mindset that you could help me with. One of the questions was, could this garage be taken away in several years from now and the original house be brought back to the 1968 version. And this is the only connection on the side of the house where the garage is going to touch the house. So there's no demo. It's just going to attach to the house with a slab. And then there's going to be a walk through to the carport. This is the elevation of the new garage and the workshop looking towards the west. So I guess you'd call it the east elevation, the east side of the house. So there's almost no demo as far as tearing anything down. And then this was, we had an official survey done a couple years ago we had some drainage considerations, and so both my property and my neighbor had an official site plan done. And this is the outline of that garage and carport on this official site plan. And there's the backyard. So you see the backyard. I made a study model just for myself, very basic study model, to try and see what it would look like and what the impact would be. So I think there's a couple pictures on that. And I like to do woodworking, so it was just sort of a fun little thing. I don't want to take too much time here, but and that's again from a different front view. So, and I tried to make it as appropriate and as seamless. My first feeling was to make it look like it's always been there, but I also understand that some new additions to historic houses, you want to add a little bit of maybe a contemporary component or something to sort of designate it from the original house. And so I haven't really worked through all, what I should do on that. It might just be siding materials, and the new contemporary garage would add to that. But my initial feeling was to make it look like it had always been there in what I was trying to design. And that's it.
Thank you,
Oh, you
Kevin.
made that.
What I did.
Thank you.
So let's do some quick questions and comments. Do you want to mix these together, because it's just a presentation? We're not voting on this.
Yeah.
Could you go back to the front elevation? Or do you want me to start? What do you want?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Sam.
So the scale of this thing and the language of this thing works fairly well with the house. So I appreciate what you've done. I have a couple questions about materials and that kind of thing. But the language that we like to use is compatible with the existing house, but differentiated from the existing house.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in the back of your head
yeah.
for the whole process. So I got some nice echoes of the language of the existing house. Like, I see why you want to do that door on the left, or right, other left. But there's some collisions that I'm a little concerned about. Like, what happens when you had the model, it looked like the roof was at the same exact height as everything else, so it was more
First
seamless.
of all, it will not be.
And then
Yeah.
this has popped up
Yes.
another
Yeah.
foot and 2 feet, something like that.
Yes.
Because you need head height for garage and tools
Yeah.
and.
And I was going to do a 9-foot wall, 9-foot walls on the addition.
Mhm.
And so the original addition is probably, I'm assuming 8 feet, but it will go up above into the railing, so to speak, of that. It's not completely flush with the first level.
Mhm.
And one of the problems was, initially I wanted to put a garage door on the carport just to have a closed up garage.
Yeah.
It's not high enough.
Yeah, because you got the.
Right,
overhead
you got all the
racks,
mechanisms
yeah,
and
all that
everything.
stuff.
So that's why I raised it up.
Yeah, I hear that. So the things that I'm concerned with on this side, well, first, is this gonna be block?
Well, and that's a design consideration of versus cost. All of the vertical columns you see coming out
Yeah.
on the house are concrete block.
Yeah.
And so I could continue that out and have it come out with concrete block. So, there's a pretty long wall on that right side going back.
Mhm.
I don't know the cost difference between a wood framed wall and concrete block.
It's-
So that's one of the design considerations.
Mhm. That might be worth looking into before you come back, is all.
Okay, I'm totally open to that.
Yeah, because what we like to do is, like, you have decided on all the things before you show. I mean, I really appreciate this conversation, in that, you know, you've got very clear drawings, you tell us like, these aren't decided yet, blah, 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 blah. So that, but when you come back for a COA, it's much preferable to say, I'm doing this door, as opposed to this one, or
So have materials decided on?
materials decided on, doors and windows decided on, make all the decisions that
Okay.
you possibly can before you show up.
Okay.
Sam, sorry, clarification. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. It's technically not in a historic district right now. It's just an outstanding building. It might come to us as a.
Oh, so it's a demolition delay, basically?
Yes.
Oh, so yeah,
Well then.
that changes things.
Does that change what I should bring in?
I mean, it's nice for us, so.
What, how
I
is,
mean, it's
Our scrutiny is nice.
not, it's just outstanding, it's not locally designated.
That is correct.
that's
Okay,
correct.
so what we're getting at is like, if we trust you to do a good job, and you wanna just like keep on keeping on with your garage, try and do it as sensitively as possible, which I think you're well on your way to doing.
Okay.
If we think you're gonna mess up the house, we're gonna say, oh, we are really
Absolutely.
leery about that.
And I'm totally open to any suggestions of keeping, what I could do to keep it, you know, in the range of appropriateness.
Gotcha, so.
Wide open.
Yeah, so my areas of concern are, you know, pick your materials. I think if you've got a good palette of materials already in the house, if you pick something that kind of works with that, I think you've got some choices to make within that range.
Okay.
So, this infill,
Yeah.
it looks like you're trying to match the wall. I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
I mean, it's like, it's a new thing. You're not, so I
Like
might make that.
corrugated, you know, galvanized, you know, siding like they do on some of the contemporary things, or, you know, and again, I was just thinking of anything.
Yeah,
you know.
but what I'm trying to say is like, you've already got a really nice, very spare palette of materials in this house already.
Okay.
So I would be very hesitant to add new stuff to it.
Okay.
Because it's simple and it's gorgeous.
Okay.
And that's what contributes to making this an outstanding building.
Okay.
So,
Well, and my first feeling was to make it seamless. You know, have the material, that's tongue and groove, redwood actually in the lower level, and then cedar for the exterior siding, tongue and groove. So I would continue, not with redwood, but I would continue with, you know, I don't know, and again, I've got two garage doors, but, you know, the siding, and again, looking at concrete block versus wood framed and cedar, you know, siding, what's appropriate. Not gonna use vinyl. I don't wanna use vinyl, it doesn't fit with the scope of the house.
I hear all of that, and I'm not trying to argue that. What I'm trying to say is, that used to be a carport. Maybe that you can still see into. Maybe that joint where, you know, when people add on to a structure, there's often a little, you know, bump, like a hyphen, they usually call them.
Okay.
So you demarcate where the old stops and the new starts. You've got this kind of, you know, it's creeping up on your house, but where the old house used to have void, maybe you can express that more.
Okay.
So maybe glass it up.
I could do windows in front of that,
Yeah,
do
that's
matching windows.
That's a possibility. The other thing, got one other thing to say, and then I'll be quiet. If you show the long garage.
The east elevation.
Yeah, the east elevation. Thank you. There we go.
Yeah.
So I'd make two suggestions here. One is I might give the chimney, if you possibly can, a little extra breathing room. And if that makes the garage creep up some, you've got room to creep up
Yes.
some. But I don't, you know. And then the other thing is, like, these are single punched windows, and everywhere else in the house you've got like double windows.
Okay.
And they're actually 3 high. So
Now, there is a 6-foot fence going down that line,
okay,
all the way down,
right,
from my neighbor.
right.
So to lower those windows, nobody would see them.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm
Okay.
saying squish them together.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
then,
I thought-
then they'll be sort of more friendly with the windows around the corner.
Okay. All right,
and then so you have pairs as you go.
sure.
And then all,
Not vertically, but this way?
Yeah.
Okay,
that was all.
okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Joe?
Yes. Well, thank you for the presentation. The house as it stands right now is a beautiful house.
Thank you.
I think the last architect who did the last remodel did a beautiful job. Part
Was
of
it the same architect that did the house
Yes.
originally?
Yeah, so I mean it's a beautiful, elegant house, and the reason it feels and it looks that way is because it's very simple.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna note, Sam did a good job noting the use of materials. Introducing new materials probably is not a good idea. You have a good samples to work with, and one of them would be along the east side, as possibly trying to use this concrete block wall, perhaps. I know it costs much more, but that's a possibility. The windows, having them individually like that, it will help tremendously if you put them together maybe by threes. So I don't know, it just needs a little bit of work there.
Okay.
But one technical issue that I see that is concerning is the roof. It's a flat roof, so it needs to drain.
Yes.
So I see that it's conflicting with your balcony on the second floor.
Yes. It wraps around it,
Right.
so it's not going over it.
So you're gonna use some type of membrane to help the water drain away,
I
or?
was gonna use the same Duralast commercial
Yeah.
roofing, have building associates put it on. I've talked with K&K Industries for truss, and my options are to build, and I think it's a 1/4 foot rise for, minimum for a flat roof.
Minimum,
And so they could build custom truss for that to span, or they have generic ones already made, and then we could frame the walls to make the difference in the pitch.
yeah, I mean, there's it's all math, so it has
Yeah.
to drain.
Yes, and my, I don't think I'm gonna have a gutter system on this, or with a French drain
Mhm.
going down the back and then draining into the backyard.
This is just a technical questions in terms of from planning. Is this been looked at by planning already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not this specific drawing, I had a bigger garage originally. And, but yes, I did submit a full set of plans, site plans, elevations to planning.
And Ernesto, I can
Yes.
jump in real quick. I'm Michael Rooker, I'm the city attorney. There's no planner here as there usually is because the Board of Zoning Appeals is happening in the meeting over, and so they monopolize all the planners.
No, that's fine.
But there are a couple of issues planning's looking at. One of them was with the front setback on this proposed
Right.
design with the garage, which comes forward from the
Right, that was
the
my
front of the
question.
building, which wouldn't be permitted under the UDO. So that would require a variance with this current design, as long as the doors are facing Moore's Pike. If the doors to the garage were facing, for example, west, no variance would be required. But
Yeah,
with this
that-
design, there would be a variance. Sorry.
Yeah, that's my
Even if it's
question.
attached.
Even if it's attached,
Yes.
yes, because the garage is forward from the front.
Okay.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, technical question, if the garage addition is protruding past the front of your, the facade, planning will have objection to that, unless the entrance to the garage is on the side. But you don't have room on this side.
My original plan was to have the garage doors on this west-facing wall, to pull a truck and back out, and I would have a astronomical driveway
Yeah, I see.
in that sense, and that's kind of what killed that. I wanted to not have the garage doors front-loaded, was my original thought.
Yeah. Have you thought about having the actual, all these pieces that you want? I know you don't want to disturb the back of your house and the views and all that, but have you thought about having this as a detached structure towards the back?
I have thought about that, and the sense of driving my car all the way to the back of the house, to garages, and that I've got this big window wall, it would directly cut almost half of the view of the backyard out. looking at that. Now, my preference is not to do that,
I know, but you could make, and this is my opinion,
okay?
but you could make the case just creating a sense of courtyard once you put that element along your east property line. That gives you some sense of protection from the east and create this sort of a, you know, definition of your backyard in a different way now. I know, you know, we get used to the same thing every day, but that's another way to see it, you know?
And one thing I was trying to, you know, put it, I could go pretty far back if
Yeah.
I wanted to, and the roof would be down a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, from the view, because
Yeah,
it
I know.
does slope down.
I noticed the contours, so they start dropping pretty quickly, so.
From the house, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a gentle slope.
Just a suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah. Just in case you find difficulty getting a variance for that garage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for this, Jeff.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, I think from my perspective and preservation-minded comment would be the fundamental mistake, in my opinion, is putting the garage in front of this house. You know, you have a lot of space. And I just came from a very complex area on Smith Street where someone had put an ADU, you know, a little bit separated from their own house. And there was another structure on the property. You have an opportunity to make a little complex. And you wouldn't have any historic issues if you
in
separated
the
this
back.
structure. And it could be a wonderful combination of a garage, workshop, future ADU, and create your own beautiful complement to this house. And the carport is part of the feature of that era.
I understand that.
And, you know, one of the features of some of the suburban houses that are objectionable to preservationists and even just designers is the front-loaded garage. You know,
Yes,
basically,
I-
my house is now my garage, you
Yeah.
know? So
That's
I'm
your
just,
focal point almost,
right,
you know?
so
you don't want that.
preservationists would just go, we love what you're doing if you're leaving the facade alone and building something beautiful in the backyard. You just have no issues whatsoever.
Okay.
And I think it's a huge opportunity to both keep that gem of a house and build an addition that's separated from it.
Okay.
Anyway, that's just my opinion.
My-
Kirsten?
Nothing from me.
Daniel?
Nothing my fellow commissioners haven't said, but I just wanted to say thank you for your great attitude and your wonderful drawings. It gives a really good feel for what you want to do, and so I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and for taking care of the house and saving the documentation and sharing all of that with us. It's really wonderful, and we can see you want to do the best by the house. So I think these suggestions maybe of trying to find a solution down that slope, maybe a little bit in the back that wouldn't be too obtrusive.
I'm gonna do that, but I do wanna say this.
Yeah.
I've got a glass wall that looks out into a forest, and it will
Yeah.
dramatically change the view. And I know that one of the variances on the planning was that if a certain situation doesn't work out, or there's no other clear way, if I'm wording this, there's like 4 different criteria or something for a variance, and if all the other ways don't really work well, then you can get a variance, possibly. I don't know the details.
Yeah, just to jump, I mean, I am not a planner, I don't even play one on TV. I'm just staff department legally, so just continue to talk to planning, they can give you some further
Okay.
advice about
Okay.
the likelihood of a variance being recommended for approval.
Okay.
So, you're all right?
Oh, I like the house. I think you should get your variance. I think you should build your garage.
Thank you. Allison?
What Renee said, I like, ditto.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like it all. I
Thank you.
like comments my commissioners have made. Some very good direction. Personally, I'm not opposed to front-loading garage, especially if you use the glass doors.
I think, yeah, as
I
a,
think
as
that
a
would, I think it
visual.
would take away from the garage, not take away from the edge, would add to what you have there already
Mhm.
without making it look just like a garage.
Yeah.
Okay? Sammy, another comment?
I was thinking about what Chris said, And normally I would totally agree. But I think this house was built in the era of the automobile. And part of the thinking of the architect had to do with how those back windows framed the landscape. So you have this front-loaded carport, which is a gorgeous little thing. And I think the other thing I forgot to say earlier is that that little side fence with the lattice is one of the sort of defining elements of the front of the house. And I think finding a way to echo that or bring that back, or, I miss that, is I guess all I'm saying. But, I would think that sort of cherishing that landscape and the view to that landscape and the time at which the house was, which was very vehicle-centric, I don't mind it being a front-loaded garage in that sense, but, I do still worry about how it geometrically, it takes away from that sort of big volume of the house. And so there's this tension that that's still, it's not quite there yet, but it needs a little massaging.
Right, I just would refer to secretary standards about primary facades. That's why I would have doubts about, this is 24 feet forward, it doesn't really seem as large, but I'm afraid that's how far forward that garage is.
What, can I ask a quick question? Just, if you were to do this on the right, are you thinking something more like an opaque glass?
Yes. Yeah, a silver frame matching all the other windows. It's a wood frame with that storm window silver frame. So it'd be a silver frame with opaque, white glass. Trying to sort of match the original windows to some degree. So.
All right. Do you have anybody else have any questions?
I guess I came here as a friend of Kevin's. We've known each other a long time, and I've had to do this sort of thing a couple of times in my career. He wants to fix up his house, and he's caught between two departments. What is the process for him to get a building permit in terms of whether you guys are in this deal? One thing we wanted to leave here tonight with was a clear understanding of how he can move forward to get an approved building permit.
That was my last question, is what do I do next?
Gloria?
That's a good question for staff.
Yeah, maybe this is the guy.
Yeah, so I think both of us might be able to provide a bit of clarity. I am so sorry we didn't have a planner here, because planning, I think, is the other major component, although Mike is planning's lawyer. But planning adjacent. So I think there are a couple of paths forward, and in the end, you're not gonna get 100% what you want. Unfortunately, it's like a give or take. If one option is to put the structure in the back and separate from the building, I'm just saying these are the options.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to choose the options. And then if you're not touching the historic building, this might be the end of the conversation with the Historic Preservation Commission. At least I can only speak to the Historic Preservation Commission. I cannot speak for planning. If you bring a proposal like this one, then I think this conversation is very, very useful, because you would be returning to the Historic Preservation Commission for a demolition delay. Mainly because although what you would be eliminating is so minuscule, sorry, bilingualism happening. What you would be eliminating would be tiny, however, it would still constitute an elimination of historic material on an outstanding building. This is the highest rating you can give any historic building in all of the United States. So the survey system is national. Outstanding buildings can be found in all 50 states plus the territories. So, and they are the rarest type. So you would be returning to the Historic Preservation Commission. And then this is where your relationship with us would be a little longer, wherein the HPC would have to make a determination whether they feel confident enough that your changes would not constitute a damage that would, so that your changes would not imperil this outstanding rating. And so they have to make the determination of whether to send it to Common Council or to allow you, or to release the demolition delay and allow you to do your project. And I think this is the reason why, and I can't speak to planning, I don't know how a variance would go. That's a whole other series of hoops that's outside of this conversation. But at least in this room, this is kind of the decisions that you're being faced. It's good that you are here right now and establishing a relationship with the Historic Preservation Commission, because if you do move forward with a project like this one or something edited like this one, it's very possible that this project will go to Common Council for a designation, or perhaps not, perhaps it will be released. But you would still have to, it would still be coming back to this room. And so this is why it's so important that this is happening now, because this way the Historic Preservation Commission is already acquainted with the project, with the building, with the owner, and establishing that trust of okay, and right now, I as staff can only say this, it is a toss-up. I cannot speak for all the commission. Most of the commission is, actually we have a really good forum tonight. Most of the commission is here, and the members who aren't would then later be able to speak their part as well, if that were to happen. So that's why I'm bringing up these different options. And then, if it does come to demolition delay, then there's two paths. So there's the first fork in the road is, Kevin, what are you going to do now? Are you going to do it towards the front or towards the back? That's the first fork. The second fork is, if you do it towards the front, you will inevitably invoke a demolition delay process. And then there's another fork, and the HPC, this member, that's why this is so important, will determine whether that will get released, and because you have been such a good custodian, will be allowed to make your changes, or if they still consider you an amazing custodian, but want to include this in the local registry of historic places. And what that means is that it will go to Common Council. There's going to be a whole process. We were talking about that process with the Cascades. There will be a report, and there will be a public hearing here, which would probably be just one of these meetings. And that would go to Common Council, and then you would bring the project back a third time for a certificate of appropriateness while it is in Common Council. So it doesn't have to wait for, Common Council takes 2 months, the back and forth, because there has to be 2 readings, I believe, and a final determination by Common Council. It doesn't mean the project won't happen, it just means that it would happen through a certificate of appropriateness. And it may end up looking very similar to this in the end, or a little different, but it will have gone through a similar additional revisions, kind of like exactly this conversation we're happening right now. So this is why it's so important. It could be a relationship where you present to us and we might not see you again, except for maybe the house tour where you invite us to. Or it could be a longer established relationship where you will have to be returning either one or multiple times to continue developing the design and talking the project, sort of hashing out this design problem with the HPC.
Does that help you, Kim?
It helps me understand the scope of things, but I'm still not real clear on my next step. What should I do?
Well, you mentioned some rating of historical significance, and that nationwide there is this category of EF1 through EF5 tornado type thing. Do we know if his house is rated a category 1?
It's outstanding. Yes. It's the highest. Yes.
It's the highest.
Yeah.
State service.
Okay. All right.
So, would it not be appropriate that he goes back to planning?
Yes.
And then, from that point, make a determination if there will be a demolition delay?
Yeah.
If remove all material, and then if there is, he would come back to us. at
That's
that
what I
point.
would recommend. I certainly don't, I'm not your lawyer, I don't want to give you wrong advice. But I think the first step is to talk to planning, to hammer out with them what this project could look like, if it's gonna require some variances, if not, what the recommendation might or might not be related to those variances, and then to figure out exactly what the project would look like.
Yeah.
After you've done that, you can make a decision about whether or not going through the demo delay process that Gloria just outlined, and that's a complicated process, as you can tell, is
Yeah.
appropriate.
Okay.
I think that's the right step, which I think is what John was gonna say.
Yeah, does that help? Yes, perfect.
Could I add one thing? You
Good.
should ask for what you want and try to get it. You clearly want what's out front.
Right.
This commission could approve that and not locally designate your house. If you think that you want to put it in the backyard after you've rethought and had different visions of it, that way you would have less trouble. But I would suggest you ask for what you want.
Show them the elevation again.
No, we
from
got it.
Above,
Yeah.
from above, to see how the backyard falls away.
We know,
We
we
got it,
know,
we got it.
we were here.
And the back wall of his living room is all glass,
We know.
looking out toward beautiful nature. And now we're gonna plop a building in front of those windows.
That wasn't my
On the
comment.
back of the house, when we got into the woods too.
Okay, all right, thanks, Kevin.
Yes,
Appreciate your
Thank
presentation.
you for your time.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you. I
in.
appreciate
All right,
you.
let's move on. We have a staff review of 2 COAs. Gloria,
Yes.
would you come over and fill us in real quickly?
Thanks.
No, thank you.
Thanks again.
Yeah, you
Maybe
bet.
we'll see you guys a little bit later.
Oh, before you leave, I wanted to show you, this is
Reasonable
my
outdoors.
third
If we get out here before 8.
This is the driveway, and
Thanks
there's
for coming in.
the spare garage is way in the back. So, it's possible.
Yeah.
This
That's-
thing,
Kevin,
I can send you like a drawing.
I drive by your house almost, not big distance. I live in the hillside.
Oh, yes.
So when I go to the mall, I live here.
Thank you very much.
And I've watched over the years.
It's been a fun project.
Okay, let me transition to the next, so that we can all go home and have our, in my case, my chicken salad. Okay, let me
Because
share.
we're gonna lose Daniel in a half an hour.
We're in
Okay.
danger of 7 o'clock.
Give me 1 second.
Well, no, we do have Bernard, but
I got another, I've gotta get going, so.
Give me 1 second, let me, where is the share? Sorry, I'm having trouble with Zoom.
technical
Give me 1 second.
difficulties.
Am I not on,
It's on your
Yeah.
desktop.
yeah,
This is easy stuff, luckily.
for some reason.
I see.
Sorry, Zoom is being weird and I don't know if I'm in the meeting or not.
Oh, you were, Gloria.
I am. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it was just a weird thing. Okay. Thank you for your patience while I work out my own personal technical issues. Let's raise Zoom over here. And there we go. It's tiny.
Can you make this big? Yeah.
There we go. Okay, excellent. So, we had
Yeah, this year's good.
2 staff reviews this time around. The first one was for COA 23-62 for 710 West 3rd Street. The owners wanted window and door replacements for their property. I was just looking back at the guidelines for this type of case where the changes to public way facade of the structure do require a certificate of appropriateness. However, the neighborhood construction subcommittee determined that it would be done by the staff. The main concern is to retain the proportions of all original openings. Replacement of windows and doors determined to be original should duplicate the original in size and scale in ways that do not visually impact the public way facade of the house and continue to reflect the period of the house. So in this case, the staff determined that the proposed doors and windows do duplicate the size and scale in a way that reflects the period of the house, and the Owners are getting them 1/1, just like the existing windows and doors. So the bottom are the designs. They're not gonna have any of the internal divisions. It's gonna be 1/1. So that was the first case. The second one is for 819 North Jackson Street in the Maple Heights Historic District, COA 23-63, where the petitioner was requesting a concrete pad for the driveway that comes out towards 13th Street. So although this is not a historic material commonly used in this neighborhood, it does not greatly detract from the neighboring buildings or the historic house. And here you can see the current entrance to the garage. And the bottom is the manufacturer's photo for the proposed concrete finish. And here is a plan of where it would be located. So this was the second certificate of appropriateness. IS staff did tell the petitioner to reach out to planning, because planning does have their own considerations regarding covered earth versus that can drain versus not, what's natural versus not natural. Yes, impervious.
Yes,
Thank you, words. Thank you. Impervious surfaces. So yes.
All right, thanks, Gloria. Now we're gonna move on to the commission review, COA 23-64, 122 West 6th Street. And our petitioner is here?
Yes, give me 1 second. Let me allow them to.
Let's see the 812 number.
Yes. Okay.
Hello.
Hello, are you the petitioner? 812-345-0128?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear us?
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This is Nate with Everywhere Signs. Sorry, I'm cutting out pretty bad.
Oh, no, you're good. Thank you for being here. So for 23-64 at 122 West 6th Street in the Courthouse Square Historic District, the petitioner is requesting for new signage. And the staff comments that although vinyl is not one of the recommended materials, aluminum is. So this is the combination of aluminum and vinyl. The size, scale, and placement of the sign does comply with the Historic District guidelines. Staff recommends approval of COA 23-64. And just for context, a lot of the signs in the area have already been using a combination of vinyl, metal, and wood. So here's just wanted to show you an image of the location. So it would be two signs. This is a corner lot. Yeah, this is a corner lot, so you can see the sign facing North College and the sign facing 6th Street. And with that, I leave it to you.
All right. Do you have anything in addition for us? Additional information? Okay, Sam, questions?
The only question I had was, the sign is 5 inches thick.
Yeah, it's the same thing that we've done the last 2 times at that location with VR Gaga and Soul Juice. It's built out of the same materials. We're using the same 2 facades. It's just a different design.
Gotcha. No other questions, thank you.
Ernesto?
No questions, John, thank you.
Elizabeth? Chris? Kirsten? Daniel? Here?
No.
Allison?
Yes. Who designed this?
Our client, I put it together with my client's components that they have been using for other promotional stuff. So it's just so it's just a nice, simple, legible font, and then a logo that they had somebody else create.
Yeah, the font is what, like Times New Roman or something? Really simple?
No, it's a simple font, but it's not like Arial. It still has a little bit more of a, it's what they've been using. And I made sure that it wasn't just Arial. It's got a little bit more, pizzazz to it than.
There's no pizzazz to it whatsoever, sir. There's zero pizzazz. I'm gonna do this because I did it before, and I'm gonna be just really honest and brutal because I'm a business owner. I've owned many businesses and had many logos and design aspects. I highly recommend hiring a professional for design. This looks very amateurish. I find the font to be horrendous from a design perspective, and I think that any digital designer would agree with me. I would highly encourage your client to ask a professional for some help with just a font.
Since my client's been open and using this since 2021, I can't just change.
No,
the
I get
whole,
it. I'm just saying it. Whatever they want to do, but this is not appealing visually whatsoever. That's it.
Thanks, Allison. Renard?
Am I the only one?
I don't have any comments or questions. Any comments, Sam?
No, I think it's fine.
Yeah, Ernesto?
No comment, John, thank you.
Elizabeth? Chris?
sorry, it
Kirsten?
wasn't a
Daniel? Karen? Alice?
I did my comment. I apologize.
That's quite all right. It happens to the best of us.
Well, I'm one of them. So.
Renard? No. All right, thank you. We need a motion to approve.
Move to approve COA 23-64.
Second.
All right, D, roll call.
Ernesto Castaneda,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
Allison Chopra,
I'm gonna abstain.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's move on to 23-65, 515 South House, Hawthorne, Elm Heights, and Mr. Gerald's with us. Thank you. Go ahead, Gloria.
Okay, so COA 23-65, if the petitioners are requesting a full window replacement for 515 South Hawthorne Drive. So this house, and there's actually even a newspaper article that they attached, had all of its windows replaced, well, not all except for 2 of its windows replaced in 2001. So these are replacements of replacements. The 2 originals are located on the back of the house towards the alleyway. One of them towards the alleyway and the other one is hidden between 2. And I think Tucker can actually clarify a little bit the location, but one of them is visible from the alley, the other one is really not. So staff does, with all of this taken into consideration, and those 2 windows are on the garage. So taking all of this into consideration, staff does recommend approval of COA 23-65. I do believe that and I think Tucker and maybe Ernesto, who works with him at Lauren Wood, might be able to clarify contact with the neighbors, the neighborhood subcommittee. The paperwork says that they did reach out and have communication, and I just didn't have time to check all of my really old emails, but I didn't have any new contact or communication from them. So I just put pending, but then I thought maybe there was a really old email that I just missed. So yeah, so staff does recommend approval of COA 23-65. And here's some more information about the building. So if you look at the left side of the screen, that's the front of the house, I believe, yes. And then the right side is the back towards the alleyway. And the 2 original windows, I think one is here, and then the other one I think is tucked between these 2 structures and is not visible at all. Here we go. So these are this is the back of the house, and so this is the location of the one visible historic window that is remaining on the building. And here's just the specifications of the wood replacement windows and shutters that are being proposed for the property. And with that, I leave it to you. Ernesto did request to, I think you can stay on for questions, but leave for the comment period and the vote.
I'm just gonna, just for the record, I'm just gonna leave Tucker to take care of the questioning and.
Okay.
So I'll just abstain.
All right.
Okay, let me unmute Tucker.
Very good. Okay. Tucker, do you have any additional comments for us before we move forward? Okay. Sam, questions?
A couple of questions. The first question for the petitioner is, are you matching all of the grid patterns that are currently on the house? Like you're doing, what are the 8/8s or whatever they are that currently exist on the house? Are you matching those Munson patterns?
Is petitioner with us?
He's
Tucker,
muted.
Tucker, can you hear us? Oh, as to mute again.
He's muted.
Let me just make him a co-host. He's the last person, so. Okay.
Ernesto, these are Pella windows they're putting in.
Yeah, yeah.
I could eliminate
Hi.
the comment.
Tucker, did you hear that
We're
question?
good.
Tucker, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
He's sorry.
Okay, we see your comments on the big screen. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the audio to work.
You could just type them out. They're pretty short.
Yeah, yeah.
Can he hear us?
Can you hear us?
Okay, thank you. And I guess the other question, which I might actually
Yeah.
make Ernesto answer, is there's a lot of information in the packet
Mhm.
about shutters, but it doesn't say what shutters they're gonna use and what the material of those shutters is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Well, before we get into questions, I kind of wanted to address the garage, the two windows in the garage, because in my application, I accidentally misspoke on which one is visible. If you could go to that slide 18, it looks like, and then if that's okay, then I'll answer the questions.
Yes. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Yeah, so that window that I pointed at, that obnoxious arrow, you actually can't see that window from the alley because it's up on like a 8-foot retaining wall, like block wall they have around the back of their house. So that window is actually not visible from the street, but the window where I wrote not visible from the street, that is visible if you're kind of between the two garage structures. So one is visible, I mean, you kind of have to look for it because it's between two buildings, but it is visible. But both of those are painted shut. So those are the two original windows on the property. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Did you hear the shutter question?
Yeah, so for the shutters, we're going to be using wood shutters. So that's the material. And then we're going to match based on this this company, the Timberlane. We're going to use the louver shutters that have the louver pattern that's like the most similar to the existing shutters. And then we're going to match the hardware as well.
Okay, I think that does me. Thank you.
No questions from the secretary? No questions. Chris?
Those are great windows, and we just are putting some in, and you actually have a choice between 5/8 muttons and 7/8 muttons, and the 5/8 are nicer looking. And you're not always aware that you have that choice because they don't make it very clear, but as they're specified as 7/8.
Okay.
right, thank you.
Yeah, it was actually
Kristen,
in.
No, I don't have anything.
Daniel?
Nothing.
Karen?
No question.
Allison?
No questions, thank you.
Bernard?
No
I
questions.
don't have any questions on this part. There's two parts to this, the shutters, the second part, Gloria?
This part?
Yeah, so are we changing the gutter, the shutters on the house?
We're replacing them, yes.
We are,
Yeah.
okay.
But with the most similar style that we can, louver style.
And
So it'll be like similar to, scroll down, I think the next page, it shows the louver styles, or maybe it's not, sorry. I should have just worked hard to PDF
It's
for
the
you.
other direction.
Back up.
yeah,
It's right there.
Yeah,
It's
it's
the,
gonna be similar to one of these ones.
Right.
okay,
yeah,
all right.
the number that they gave in the packet was the top right-hand one.
This
Okay.
one.
TR1
Right.
or something.
Yeah. All right, thank you. I don't have any questions. So let's move to comments. Sam?
They're really nice windows. If you're willing to incorporate the thinner buttons as Chris suggested, I've got no issues.
Okay.
Elizabeth? Chris? No. Kirsten? Daniel? Karen? Allison?
No.
Renard? I haven't got any questions. So we need a motion for approval.
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Thank you. Dee, roll call?
Ernesto Castaneda,
Yep.
Daniel Slagle,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
Allison Chopra,
Yes.
Bernard Cross,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Tucker. All right, let's move on to, that's all our COs. Let's move on to new business. Is there anything that we need to talk about, Gloria?
I need to plug Elizabeth Mitchell's documentary this Sunday. Can you tell us when and where it's going to take place?
This is my new documentary, and it will be at Monroe County Public Library at 3 p.m. And it's about First Baptist Colored Church and the restoration of that church that I was involved in since 2016. So I videotaped every step of the way and interviewed people, and we'll tell about the community, the black community that made that area wealthy and built this church,
All right.
as well as the restoration.
So it's an extraordinarily special occasion.
All right.
Is it Saturday or Sunday?
Sunday.
Sunday, 3
o'clock.
3 p.m.
Yeah.
Monroe County Public Library.
Okay. All right, no more new business. All right, let's get to the old business. I know there's nothing there, but I do have a question for Mike, and that has to do with our wonderful house on Ballantyne, and also the building on Fairview and Second. That's right.
So you want to talk about the house on Ballantyne? or-
Yes, well, let's start with Ballantyne, because I know that there's activity with that house that's back for sale again. And, because I've had, as everybody knows, I'm a realtor, so, the agent who's writing the offer on it contacted me, and I've talked to Gloria. So if you could bring us up to date where we are with that.
I can try, Gloria, may be able to bring you guys more up to date than I can. Is there, I know I've seen a draft notice of violation. I think the idea is to have that sent out no later than Monday if necessary. And John or Gloria, jump in if I say something wrong. I don't know, you had mentioned something about the possibility with the potential purchaser, but I'm not sure where that stands. Other people are raising their hands.
So, we usually send a preliminary notice of violation that sends people here, but when fines are in play, we send a notice of violation as well.
I was under the impression that a notice of violation had been sent out some time ago. Is that not the case?
So this is a slightly different case because this came to the HPC for a certificate of appropriateness to do different changes to the house, and that's when it came to the HPC. became clear that something was done improperly to it.
Is that the columns?
Yes.
Yes.
And
the
so a
plaster
certificate of
not-
appropriateness was given for 2 years contingent on the columns being repaired, and the 2 years passed, and they were not repaired, so yes, it's been on my to-do list for a long time. I've got the letter drafted. Tomorrow morning I'm going to go take photographs of that and 5 other buildings, and meet with legal and with the rest of hand staff and get them all out.
I'm just incredibly distressed that it's been years since the original material was removed. It's come to a new owner, and we don't have anything in place yet. I would like to see a lot of motion very quickly. I would like to see the violations, the notice of violations delivered as soon as possible. I would like also to see a schedule of fines, amounts, and dates, because every day, every season that this stuff is exposed, this brick was never meant to be open to air, and that's an outstanding house. It's and I think that we really need to prioritize this, because otherwise this commission has no teeth. So I want to see something happen.
Yes, and you will.
I want to see something happen soon.
You will.
Good.
You will.
Thank you, Sam. So yeah, I think something really, I have to agree with Sam, something's gonna have to happen very quickly, because I think that the people who are interested in this house will probably end up getting it. And I think the situation should be remedied before these people get to that point, or at least something very clear set forward. Yes, Sam?
Has the current agent or the current seller put in their, what are the things, disclosures, that there is a violation that has occurred?
Originally, no. They are in there now. And then, of course, I don't think this agent knew that. It's a different agent who took on the job, and it's up to the seller.
Yeah, the seller certainly knew.
Yeah, well, yes, they do. And they should have disclosed that, or should have made that known to this particular agent. But in the, from my understanding, the offer that's being made on the property, it will be subject to all fines and everything being cleared up before they buy the property.
Okay.
So, and then we're talking, the other thing, it's not Fairview, but it's on East Second Street, the two-story building, apartment building that's missing the tile around the parapet. Is that the corner?
Yes,
Pheasant.
605 South Fest.
Yeah. So, what's going on with that, Gloria?
It's gonna be the same situation. There was a lot of back and forth that they were gonna fix it, and
Right.
that they were gonna fix it, and we were kept on giving them more time.
And we had the
And
pandemic
and during the,
This isn't on the agenda, is it?
No, it's
It's an
under old business.
But is it,
things can be added during the meeting. It's okay.
I just want to make sure we're following notice requirements.
We are.
Okay.
And actually, the notice doesn't need to be the agenda. The notice just
I
has
just
to be noticed. So, you're good. We're good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So they have not followed through at this point?
No, and we did contact them multiple times.
Okay.
So, yeah, all of these letters are just gonna come out because they have to. And I will give a full report during the next meeting. That's on the agenda.
Okay. So you guys will get this taken care of and we'll move forward?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, great. Because it's been a long time.
Yep.
I guess the only other thing is that I think these fines should be recurring until the situation is remedied. Because you can.
We talk about fines, that's always part of the conversation, but, ultimately, the goal here is always compliance. So to the extent that we have Valentine situation, the goal is to have compliance, to return everything to the condition it was in before the unlawful act occurred.
Yeah, and you know, I'm perfectly fine with having some or all of the fines restored, provided that it becomes in compliance. That's the point. But that's our stick.
We're on the same page.
Very great. All right, thank you. Do we have any public comments? Do we have any public? No. Going to be online with us. Have any comments? All right, hearing none, let's call this meeting adjourned.